Thanks, Haja. Today we have a guest speaker. Really excited about this one, and we're bringing together two topics, which are actually my two favorite topics: strategy and RGM, and my third favorite topic, AI. So it's all in here. So I'm really excited. Hope everyone else is. And without wasting too much time, just very briefly on myself, and then I'll head over to the expert, to Haja, to start the session. So my name is Ingo. I'm co-founder, managing director of Buynomics. Spent all my professional life in pricing, revenue management. Before that, I spent my academic life in strategy. Actually, that's what makes me excited about this topic. And I started a company called Buynomics. For those who don't know it, on the next slide. We are building a SaaS solution that helps our users, our customers, make better RGM decisions. It's based on a technology that we developed, the virtual shoppers, which allows teams to very precisely predict how shoppers react to offer changes. So it tells you what happens when you increase a price, decrease a price, remove a product, add a new product, introduce a new innovation. All of these changes, you can use the tool. For all of these changes, you can use the tool to make better predictions on how demand reacts. You can do this because it's a SaaS platform. Once it's set up, super fast. Teams can do the work within days where they needed weeks or months before. And because it gives them much more flexibility and the ability to look at a very large set of scenarios, they typically find cases that are much more profitable or increase revenue, depending on what the organization is aiming for, than they were previously. And that makes it a very interesting business case for our customers. And now, without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Haja. Haja, we met at it's one of our customers. We helped introduce our Buynomics solution at Pladis in the past, and I think what I'm also excited about is Haja is not only in the expert in the RGM field in technology, but he also shares or has a good understanding of our entrepreneurial story. So I'm really happy to have this session with you, and I'm really looking forward to learning about the 7 strategies.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ingo. And thank you for having me today. And wherever you are in the world, everyone, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone. Really excited to be joining Ingo and the team here to share with you a little bit of what I think about, how AI is going to shape RGM. And more importantly for you, how can you really get value out of any AI-led transformation in the RGM space, revenue growth management? Now, my background is when I went to university back in Singapore, that was about almost 30 years ago now, and it has gone so quickly. And that's when I was sat at the computer lab in the National University of Singapore, and they had introduced what then became the internet. So for the first time, I was experiencing the internet in the computer lab, and that really changed my thinking and career. I could see that technology was going to be a dominant technology in the decades to come. And I was very, very lucky in the sense that my whole career I've been working around basically internet technologies. What I mean by that is helping organizations implement anywhere between what started out as simple websites to apps, full digital transformation across the business. And lucky to have worked across the world in various industries, including retail, consumer packaged goods, B2B businesses, and so on. And also been on the other side, as Ingo mentioned, on 2 tech startups as a co-founder leading the technology. What makes me really excited at this juncture is what we are seeing with AI is anything like we have not seen before. It's extremely amazing what we can do with ChatGPT today, which we just couldn't do 18 months back. And my take on this is that this is going to be a phenomenally transformative technology. And the big question is, how do we leverage it to the full benefit of humanity and in businesses? So that's the topic for today. How do we derive value from AI? And before we derive value from AI, how do we implement it in a systematic way? Now, as I was preparing for this webinar, I was thinking about what are the big forces driving, the economy today. And none of us can escape this. Inflation is all around us. That has been the theme for the last 3 years. In the last 5 years, we have had a pandemic, we have had high inflation, we have had wars, we have had supply chain disruption, and so on. Now, in this economic environment, there are two big forces, in my view, shaping it. Now, those of you who have been following the news, this Wednesday was kind of an important turning point, I would say. The Federal Reserve in the US dropped interest rates by 0.5%, and it was much higher than the analysts were expecting. So that, to me, signals we are at a turning point in the economy, at least in the Western world. What I would call the post-inflation economy is in front of us. So compared to what we experienced in the last few years, what lies ahead of us is post-inflation economies. If you're in a consumer business, trying to price your products, trying to run promotions and so on, the levers that worked and the way the levers worked in terms of pricing or promotions or pack price architecture would behave differently when you look ahead in a post-inflation economics. We are already seeing very strong evidence, like we as consumers are switching to different brands, switching to discounters, switching to OEM brands, white label brands, and so on, right? So this is a big macro trend that is ahead of us. How it would play out, none of us would be sure. However, what we can be sure of is it will be different to what happened in the past 5 years. The second big thing is AI, and the more correctly said, it is actually the democratization of AI. AI has been there for a long time, but now it is becoming accessible, it's usable. To the extent that my young daughter, who is just about to get into secondary school, she has been using a lot of AI, ChatGPT actually. And from time to time, she would come and tell me, Daddy, this seems to be like somebody's behind there answering our questions. This is too accurate. This is too good to be like being done by a computer. So in her mind, this is like a really, really intelligent person talking back to her. Now, that's not surprising because AI is now mature. All of us have seen the power of it. What does this mean? So the combination of this post-inflation economics plus the rise of AI means we have to think about solution and transformation ahead of us quite differently to how we would have approached these before. Now, why does that matter when it comes to, say, RGM? The simple way I think about it, or the way I explain it to myself is, today as a consumer, you and me have plenty of choices. We get into any supermarket, we look at any category of products, be it detergents or snacks or drinks, we have endless choices. What that endless choice leads to is an exponential growth in the data which we are creating. So every time we choose a product in the aisle and we do not choose another product, we are generating data. And if you're a consumer business, you would be already used to this data. But what has changed dramatically in the last 2 years is the rise of AI and how we make meaning out of that data to come up with the right insights to drive the right decisions. Right? So historically, we did pricing. If you're a consumer business and if you're a RGM team within a consumer business, you would use an Excel or you would use some statistical studies or consumer surveys to drive pricing. Sometimes you engaged a third-party consultant to validate some of your assumptions to drive pricing and promotions. However, what I'm increasingly finding, and in my last experience working for a CPG, those methods are losing their efficacy and their effectiveness. And this is based on conversations with not the technical people, but the commercial people driving these decisions. And they're increasingly finding that doing it manually with Excels or intuitively is not having the impact it used to have before. So there is a real strong case with increased data. I'm convinced that people looking at Excel sheets cannot crunch those kind of numbers. And because we as consumers are producing so much data, the data is rapidly changing. You really need AI on your side now to drive better commercial decisions. So one caveat I would make is today, the essence of my presentation is to share with you based on experience. Whenever you look at transformation with new technology, what works and what doesn't work. The technology itself has kept changing, but the foundations or the fundamentals of what drives value in a transformation and what doesn't drive value has remained consistent over my career. And that's based on learning from working in industry as well as consulting. And that's actually what I'm going to share with you, a framework. I'm going to draw heavily on consumer packaged goods and retail examples, but I'm actually not referring to any one company or one industry. What I'm going to share with you is applicable across industries. Today, we'll use RGM as the domain where we apply it to. Now, I've had the good fortune of looking at transformation in the revenue growth management space from two lenses, actually. One lens is over time, meaning how do RGM teams evolve over time in terms of their capability and the tools they have. And the second thing is actually RGM teams with different maturity on this curve at the same time because they are operating in different markets. So I've had the good fortune to have looked at things from both of these lenses, and I'll briefly share with you what this is. If you're looking at your RGM maturity, right on the left-hand side, we see organizations and teams still using Excel, lots of manual work, and then still the capability they have is cost plus pricing. So most of what they do is cost plus pricing, and then they discount with some promotions and so on. But fundamentally, it is Excel-based, it's very manual, and there's a lot of intuition. Now, intuition is not a bad thing. I'm never in favor of full automation because human beings have some enormous creativity and power. The challenge with intuition, it's not reproducible. You can't scale it, you can't repeat it, and you can't get to the same results time and again with intuition. On the other end of the spectrum, what I've seen are organizations which recognize that they need to leverage advanced analytics, especially AI, to get close to the consumer. AI is just the tool to understand the consumer a lot better, to derive pricing, promotion, PPA decisions based on consumer behavior. Right? So they get that very clearly, and that's a brilliant starting point. Then they leverage advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, to enable them to aid those decisions. Right? And the ultimate goal there is really the triple win. Triple win is basically making sure that whatever they are doing with the promotions and pricing, they are expanding the pie so that it's not a zero-sum game between them, the retailer, and the consumer. Rather, it expands the pie for all parties so that they can expand the category and grow the business that way. Right? So the most mature teams I've seen, the most kind of enlightened teams in the RGM space, they recognize that the triple win, the consumer back approach is where they need to get to, and then they leverage technology to get to that as quickly as possible. And you can see from this diagram, those teams add the most value in terms of contribution to top line growth, contribution to margins, as well as running the team very effectively in an automated manner. Now, how do you go from the left to the right? So that's basically has been my work over the years, helping businesses. And in the last, in the work in the last 4 years, it's more the commercial functions, helping them with the analytics and the prediction capability they need to go from the left to the right. So let me share with you what does it take to go up the maturity curve so that you as an RGM team are contributing more to your organization's top and bottom line. I'm sharing with you a framework, what I've called the Leaders Transformation Framework. So there are 7 things you need to think about and you need to get good at before you can run a successful transformation. And we are going to dive into each one of these in detail in the coming slides. The first one is to lead with a really strong business case. And what I mean by a business case, and I was having this conversation with a senior commercial leader in one of the business units I was working with. And they had been tasked to solve a problem in the business where they needed to increase the accuracy of their demand forecast. So we were having this, I was having this conversation with this gentleman, very, very experienced, very commercially astute, and he has done a lot of work in the commercial space in the CPG industry with over 20 years experience. And he was explaining to me, Haja, the issue we are having is, most of our products do not go above 60 to 70% in terms of our sales forecast accuracy. And he was able to very clearly articulate, if they increase the forecast accuracy by 1%, they're going to get so many benefits which they already were suffering from. And he explained to me that when their forecast is not accurate, in a few months' time, when they put the stock into the retailer, they have to clear the stock. They have to pay for the reverse logistics to clear the stock. They have to pay for the warehouse to stock it. And then sometimes they had to pay retailer penalties because they didn't meet the targets of the promotion. Now, those were real pain, and he was able to articulate it extremely clearly. And then we said, okay, we can potentially help here. There's probably some algorithms we can build to test this out to help you support, come up with a better forecast. And he immediately jumped on this idea, built a business case, just few slides. And the beauty of that business case was when we showed it around to the leadership in that business unit, everybody agreed to it. Everybody nodded and said, yeah, that makes sense. What I learned from that example was this gentleman was building his business case from the pain point. He really knew what the pain point in the business was, and he knew what the painkillers was. He established that very clearly. In fact, he had calculated every 1% increase in forecast accuracy would lead to X% cost savings or cost avoidance for that business. Everybody agreed with that. Nobody disputed it. On top of that, we suggested to him that with the machine learning forecast, you would be able to increase your top line and your margins as well. Now, those are what I would call vitamins. A mistake I've seen so many times being made is people build business cases with a lot of vitamins saying that they would deliver X, Y, Z, but they have not touched on the painkillers. With leadership teams, the painkillers sell better, and then the vitamins come next. If you're talking to your leadership team to unlock any kind of a budget or an approval or a CapEx to do a transformation, my suggestion to you is you start with the painkillers and then the vitamins, and you would find that your business case is flying through the process and you are favored compared to all the other competitive need for CapExes and budgets. The second thing is that when you have a bright idea, the budget wasn't there actually. So nobody planned for this bright idea in 2 years, 3 years in advance, or as part of their annual planning cycle. So if you come up with a good AI solution and you know it's going to add value, you will find a catch-22 situation. That catch-22 is you've got a bright idea, but you've got no budget. And the kind of learning I had, or this kind of secret, was that there's always budget available. If your business case is clear, you can unlock hidden budgets. And where these budgets are usually hidden, usually at the C level, the CEO will have some sort of a transformation budget, or the chief technology officer or the chief information officer might have a transformation budget. If your business has a strategy team or a transformation team, they too would have some budget for this kind of discretionary initiatives. So the story I used to tell my team and myself is you're only 2 to 3 conversations away from unlocking budgets if you know what you're talking about. So I'm emphasizing point number 1 because if your why and your what is very clear, you can usually unlock the budgets. Now that brings us to the next point. So who are you solving for? Right. So a mistake I see often is people are excited by AI. People are saying, wow, ChatGPT can do this. Can I integrate this with this? Can I, use it to tell a story, etc. But actually, for the next foreseeable future, 10, 15 years, humans are still going to be very actively in the mix. They are still going to be driving businesses, driving decisions. You are still, probably all of us are still going to be reporting into a human boss for the next couple of decades. Right? That's not going to change. So the next thing I suggest you think about, who are you solving for and how can you bring that group on a journey? Right? Not everyone is well versed with AI. Everybody has a different level of understanding. You really need to educate people and win hearts and minds if you're undertaking AI transformation. Around about a year back, I had an opportunity to present about AI to a business group, which consists of people who are working on new product development as well as research. And they had not heard much about AI, whereas as me leading the analytics transformation, I had a keen interest in AI. So my knowledge was just a little bit higher than the average audience. So I presented to them about AI, what it is and what are the opportunities and so on. And then it was very quickly apparent in the room that there was a real mixture of understanding. Even though everyone in the room had used ChatGPT, the interpretation of how it was working was very, very varied. Like, how is this technology running? What can it do? What it cannot do? There was a completely different opinion and mixture of ideas in the room. That gave me a kind of a light bulb moment. Before we can undertake any kind of an AI transformation, we need to level up people knowledge so that people have some common vocabulary and common mindset to work with. This is super important because if you don't have this, it is like speaking Greek to people and you would have people understanding it very differently. So my strong encouragement is before you undertake any kind of an AI transformation, and once you have formed the team, please level people up to some sort of a knowledge so that people are on the same plane. And this will make a massive difference to your project downstream in terms of its success. The other key thing is, with AI, it's the number one ingredient for us as humans to succeed with AI is our mindset. If you look back 20 years, if you look at your phone, it's very predictable. If you do X, it will do Y. So if you have an input, it will give you an output, right? We are all mentally trained to do this. If you put in X and it gives you Z, you know it's wrong. You know that it's not working and you will do something else. With ChatGPT, you can try this little experiment, put the same prompt twice and you will get a different answer or a slightly different answer, right? Because AI is predicting things, it's making stuff up, it's creating things. So the output is going to be different and unpredictable and unexplainable. We need to get comfortable with this. This is a mindset block we need to unblock before we can get to leverage the AI's full capability. Because I've met teams where they have built an algorithm together, and then when they're seeing the output is varying over time, and this confuses them. And because they are not in this mindset, they revert back to the X and Y output example of the phone I gave you, and then they think that the AI is wrong, right? And then it derails the whole project. So I can't emphasize this enough. Training mindset, communication on what you're doing with the initiative is super important for you to bring people on that journey. Now, that brings us to your stakeholders. Who are you building this AI-powered RGM for? If you're in an RGM team, you have stakeholders. You are getting inputs from marketing team, your category team, and you're producing outputs for your sales teams or your finance or your leadership, right? So there is always a constant flow of inputs and outputs. It may be in the form of Excel or reports or some sort of a dashboards, decisions, meetings. And usually these interactions are linked to the business process cycle of that business. So think about your 5-year strategy planning, your annual budget planning, your S&OP planning, your quarterly and monthly business reviews, and your weekly. So your inputs and outputs are actually linked to those processes. You may not have thought about it this way, but in most RGM businesses, this is actually driving the day-to-day activities. So if you're undertaking an AI transformation within RGM, if you're going to introduce an AI tool into RGM, invariably it will impact your stakeholders in this group. Now, the question I get asked often is, right, we need to include everyone on this transformation and make sure everybody is happy with this. Now, the successful transformation I've seen tries to strike a balance. If you try to cater the solution to everyone, it doesn't work. The project derails. Or if you exclude everyone and you build it in isolation, it doesn't grow over time and it doesn't scale. So it's a sweet spot, and this is bespoke to your organization. Have those conversations and figure out who is it valuable for, and can we do that in stages. That will give you your priority list in terms of your RGM transformation. Now, that brings us to point number 4. It's all about driving early wins. I remember a story from industry some years ago. We had built a very nice analytical tool for the commercial team so they can see their sales, their margins, what is driving those sales, who are the retailers contributing to the sales, who is detracting from it, which category is growing, etc. So very powerful analytics which they didn't have before, and they were going to use that to drive their pricing and promotion decisions. Fantastic feedback in the early days and really good traction. And one conversation I had with one of the users was, brilliant, this is brilliant. We got all these nice dashboards. We got ChatGPT now. Can we link ChatGPT to this so that it builds a very powerful narrative so that I don't have to write a report? Okay, I thought about it. Okay, it's not a very interesting ask actually. And probably, I heard that from a few people. Can we do that? I thought about it, and the more I thought about it, where's the value with that? You're just taking a nice dashboard and then adding a narrative on top of it, and you can't even be sure whether that narrative is accurate or the LLM is making stuff up, right? So it goes back to our previous point number 1, always focus on where the value is, right? If they had asked me a different question, like, okay, we got all these insights, how can we make better predictions out of it? And how can we land those predictions in the market and test very quickly? That's a very, very different, very powerful question, right? So think about the real value drivers and the nice to haves. It is easy to be lost with the technology and come up with something shiny, but it's not driving value. In that same example, that team gave a lot of feedback. And as Ingo mentioned at the beginning of the seminar, I was responsible for implementing Buynomics AI solution in RGM teams in a number of markets I had worked with before. And one of the markets came back with very quick feedback. They said, this is driving a lot of time savings for us. What took us ages to do in Excel, we are now able to do that with the tool significantly faster. So what that meant to me was value need not come from immediately from the top and bottom line growth, but from efficiency gains, from user happiness with the tool that could be the immediate source of value, while you then implement the decisions coming out from your AI RGM tool to then unlock, dollar sign value into the business. And with RGM, it is a bit like trying to rebuild the plane while it's flying, right? If you're transforming your RGM function, you're already live with decisions. And it is important that people feel comfortable that if you're introducing an AI tool, it is actually coming up with better predictions than human can do. And AI does that over time, but not immediately. As you train with more data and you are comfortable with it, it gets better and better. So my strong suggestion to that team was do parallel run. test the AI solution, what it's outputting, test it in the market, and also test it out in the over time, and back test it if you can. Back test it with your previous predictions, and that way you can compare and contrast. So early wins in my area, in my focus at least, is really focusing on value, what is driving value, and to have a kind of a very focused approach on what drives value and what is just noise or nice things to have. Importantly, if your leadership has sponsored you to do this transformation, communicate as much as possible. So that story I mentioned about the user finding it a lot more easier, that caught on very well with users, because we were able to convincingly express ourselves saying that, yes, this AI tool is making a difference and we should persevere with it and develop on it. Now, I talked about building the plane while it's flying. So with AI and any kind of a transformation, it comes with risk. Over these 30 years, I've done numerous transformation projects in implementing technology to solve all kinds of business issues over time. And there is a pattern to the risks. If you're undertaking any sort of a project, you usually face data risks, technology risks, integration, delivery, and once you have built the tool and it is ready to use, you face change management risks. What happened in the last several decades with technology is technology has improved so significantly. Some of these risks now you can mitigate it even before the project starts. What I mean by that is 5 years ago, if you're building a machine learning algorithm or an AI solution in RGM space, there were almost very, very few solutions you can go out to market and buy. You would buy some regression models from one of the cloud providers like AWS, or you would buy some models, you would bring in your data, you would hire some data scientists, you would build those models. A lot of the large CPGs, that's what they invested in the last 10 years, right? To build big data science teams, to crunch their data, buy all these algorithms, etc., etc. Today, you don't need to do that. Today, a lot of that technology is available. Importantly, that technology being available to buy means it's a big risk reducer. You can then focus on applying that technology into the business, iterate, and start to extract value out of the technology. And because AI learns on the data, by training it repeatedly, it becomes bespoke to your business. It gets better and better at solving your business problem, which you can't get from an algorithm you buy off the cloud, right? So you can take risks and kind of flip it on its head and turn it into an advantage, is my experience. So do away with all the risks you can mitigate from the project onset, right? Why I highlight value delivery on this slide is, if you're on the business side and if you're driving the RGM transformation, always focus on the value, because this is what your C-level leadership is looking for. They are not interested in what technology and what algorithm you're using. They are more interested in, did I land that transformation project and that project is adding value to the top and bottom line? This is what C-level leaders are interested in. And by shifting your project focus to the value delivery and not on the technology, you would make a lot of friends at the C-level. And that is my own personal experience, in having done all these corporate roles as well as on the consulting side. Hopefully, you're finding that of value. If that is the case, I've got just 2 more strategies to share with you. The next one is refining for maximum impact. Now, with AI, we are going to be confused. So with ChatGPT here, with the LLMs here, we are already seeing, the big companies like Microsoft launching their co-pilots. Everyone, Google, Microsoft, AWS, they are all launching their flavor of, LLMs and models and so on. Now, if we are just focusing on that on the supply side, meaning the technology supply side, it's easy for us to be distracted and take our eyes off value. And if you're in a CPG business, if you're producing drinks, or if you're producing toothpaste, or if you're producing snacks, That's what generates value. That's what generates a return. So it's super important that we never forget what drives value in the business, and then make sure that every iteration of AI introduction in a RGM, for example, is driving that value. In RGM, it's very clear you are influencing the 5 Ps: pricing, promotion, product, distribution, and so on. You are influencing that. If you can predict consumer behavior with the help of AI better than your competitors, you're going to add value to your organization. You're going to grow your market share. You're going to grow your top line. You're going to grow your bottom line. The technology piece is secondary. It's an enabler for you, right? While you're doing this, if you can do this cheaper, better, faster than your competitors, again, you have created a source of value, which is what I call process efficiency gain. So remember our previous slide, your RGM team is not happening in a vacuum. You have a lot of stakeholders. You're producing, you're getting inputs, you're producing outputs. If you can do those pricing decisions, if you can do those PPA decisions cheaper, faster, better than your competition, it's going to make an impact on your bottom line. And if you can just deliver these two levers, you would be the most loved people within your business, because you are directly impacting your top and bottom lines within the business. Now, I've seen people in various CPGs and retailers, they intuitively understood this. They were super valued within the business, and they could do it, intuitively. They got their pricing decisions right. However, as I say, it is not repeatable. It is not scalable, which is fair. An AI-enabled or an AI-assisted RGM team can become super powerful in being able to reproduce those really good decisions, right? So never take your eye off the ball. Prioritize your AI impact for high impact areas. Keep prioritizing your delivery list or your project roadmap based on value delivery. Now, on to our seventh important strategy. Once you launch any kind of a transformation, it's like taking off on a plane, right? As soon as the plane takes off, you're off course, right? If you're taking off from London to get to New York, as soon as the plane takes off, the pilot knows that the plane is off course, and he makes probably hundreds, if not thousands, of corrections to get the plane on course every minute so that the plane reaches their destination, right? Any transformation is like that. You can't fire and forget and hope that value would magically show up. It doesn't show up magically. You need to make a lot of cost correction. So imagine this scenario. So you launch something, an AI-related RGM here in 2024. In 2025, it inevitably the technology will improve, your business needs will improve, and the customer feedback, those who are using the tool, will have given you feedback. So like the pilot is cost correcting the plane, you would make small changes to your tool and keep on focusing on your destination, which is the value delivery, so that you can land the plane successfully. And it is work in progress, and it is a bit like looking for perfection. As you move towards the right, you will face growth, but you'll also face challenges. But surmounting those challenges is what will get you to value. Now, hopefully you have seen the 7 strategies I've shared with you. It is a bit like a puzzle. I've given you 7 pieces of the puzzle. What I learned over the years is if you just implement a few pieces of this puzzle, the picture is not going to show up. You're not going to see that beautiful puzzle being completed. But when you put everything together, you'll be surprised what shows up. And that's when you get real value. That's when it all works. So the 7 strategies I mentioned is a game changer. The game changer is if you put all 7 to work, well thought out before you implement any kind of a transformation, especially in RGM enabled by AI, you're going to see tremendous value. And the so what is at the end of that transformation, you would have a much clearer picture of your consumer. And AI would help you understand that data, bring insights to life so that you can make much more confident predictions about what your consumer will do. If I summarize AI, what it is, it's a prediction machine. Those of you who understand the LLMs better than me would realize that it's actually just predicting the next word. And it is predicting so well that it looks like a perfect essay or a perfect paragraph. And it is drawing the next pixel as it has drawn on the screen you have seen. The full image comes to life. It is just predicting the next pixel. So in that same way, when you apply AI to RGM, you would be able to predict what your consumer is going to do at the shopping aisles. As a result, you will have game-changing results in terms of your pricing, PPA, and promotions. I want to thank Ingo and the team at Buynomics for having me share my thoughts on this. And thank you so much for patiently listening. And I would hand back over to Ingo now.
Yeah, thanks, Haja, so much for a great talk. I think I certainly did appreciate it a great deal. And I hope the audience also have one comment. I think it's only a comment, not a question. We got many thank yous. So thank you, Haja. Great set of slides. Your point around delivery against value and be clear on the problem statement is very true. And by small iterations, you will quickly be able to win stakeholders. Many thanks, many thanks. Maybe just one question here. What are the most powerful RGM use cases you've seen? And I think then with that, I think we'll answer the rest of the questions afterwards because we're very much at the end of the time. And I have two more announcements I want to get out.
Right. So I will keep it brief, and the folks at Buynomics understand RGM, especially the application of AI, much better. So I would suggest you reach out to them as well after this webinar, and they would be able to take you through. The number one thing is when RGM teams are making decisions about, say, pricing or promotion, what they're doing is actually they're predicting consumer behavior. And when they get that right, whether using conventional tools or using AI, they are seeing the results. So the number one lever for RGM is not one of the levers like pricing, promotion, pack price architecture, distribution. It's not one. But when you're able to do all of that with effectively in one solution, and you're able to predict much better. So in your RGM maturity, if you can get to that state, whatever tool you're using is going to give you significantly better results, is what I would say.
All right. Many thanks. So great overall insights. If anyone has questions for Haja, just send them to us. We'll forward them, and I hope we'll get them answered. Before we close, just two things I want to point out. At Buynomics, as a team, we developed a new RGM framework that really covers all the different topics that are relevant for RGM teams, from understanding the overall corporate strategy and how that affects RGM into execution of the strategy improvement, what organization team you need, and the proper technology. And what we've seen in many conversations is that many of us in the field are at different stages of the RGM journey and have different levels of maturity. And maybe just one feedback to many is, I think overall in many companies, the impression is that they are farther behind in their maturity than they really are, in particular if compared to many others. So many are, I think, much more advanced, have much better data, and have better processes than they think they do. And to help everyone get an understanding, and for us to really prepare a proper benchmark, we've developed a questionnaire. And Haja, if you can go to the next slide. On how to assess RGM maturity, and you can get the link to the questionnaire. So it's around 30 questions, so it should be answerable in about 5 minutes. I've done it in about 5 minutes, where you can get a self-assessment of where you are in these different areas in the RGM framework in terms of your maturity, and will also provide immediately the feedback on your results, and then later on a benchmark where you stand against others. So I think it's going to be a very helpful resource. If you click or if you scan the QR code, you will get the link, and I think Skenya will also put it into the chat. So that would be very interesting insights for you, and for us it would be very helpful input if you can answer that questionnaire, and we'll provide back to you your feedback, the benchmarking of where you are compared to others. Before we close, I've on the next slides just want to introduce the next webinar. So the next one is going to be October 11th, probably in 3 weeks. Another expert webinar with Nazar from Hilti Group. He will also talk about his pricing RGM journey. He will talk about how he set up a new pricing approach in the Hilti organization. So also very interesting. And then the next webinar after that's one of my annual favorites, the pricing horror stories, always for Halloween, where we talk about cases where pricing went wrong in organizations. That's always a bit more fun part of what we're doing as a discipline. So I also encourage everyone to join that one. That's going to be fun. If you have horror stories yourself and willing to share them, we're always open to include more content. So really looking forward to that. Otherwise, I hope it was an interesting session for you. It certainly was for me. And I close with wishing you all a good weekend and hope to see you soon in the next one. Thanks.